Not so long ago, a new continuation of the Scandinavian God of War appeared to arise, and therefore I believe that now it is the time to go back to the past when the white Kratos was still in Greek mythology and speed the Greek gods of the white speed. I have never played the old God of War in my life, and therefore now it will be very exciting to dive into the game of 2005 so that it rapes me in the most sophisticated way that a game of that time can only rape. Having reinsured myself, I armed myself with an emulator in which you can save at any moment of the game, but even this did not always help. But be that as it may, let's go watching this old game.
God of War.
The gods of Olympus have abandoned me.
The game starts with what I wanted to do during the last hour of this game, namely jumping to the death from the highest mountain in Greece, without thinking that there is water under it which cannot kill him as much as solid earth. Somehow he intuitively looked for a mountain for suicide. And immediately after that we were moved back 3 weeks ago to show how it all began cliché. And it all started with a crooked emulator, thanks to which these tries began to hurt me on the screen. Sorry, this is the first time I use it, a little later it will be fixed. Kratos appeared of some kind of broken ship, the breaking of which the developers were too lazy to show, and we were instantly thrown into battle, during which you can see one of the most awesome combat systems that I ever have seen. The controls are responsive, everything works smoothly, and these swords of chaos have such a spread that it's stupidly impossible not to hit at least one enemy. Many different combos, some of which open after a while. You can grab the enemy and depending on button you pressed, make penetration with him of varying severity. The second sword which will be given somewhere in the middle of the game, with which you will feel an increase of your dick by 15 centimeters in general. It's just awesome in almost the entire game. Well, we will go to the last couple of hours a little later, so be patient. And instantly after we taught the basic of the combat system, on the way we met the first boss, or rather a piece of the first boss, which we will fight fully later. And even piece of it, like all the other bosses in the game, cool as hell. While the game had just begun, they decided not to rape me so much, and therefore he doesn't knock out a lot of health and is taken out quite simply, so that a sort of bugs like me don't turn off the game in the first minute of the passage. And also here you can see the burst of the famous QTA moments, which then had not yet begun to infiltrate everyone with the appearance. Immediately they enrage, but rarely, due to the fact that they appear very abruptly, and if you plug it even for a millisecond it will fail and you will have to do it again. It doesn't not lead to death, and often you can try again immediately after a failure, and therefore the nerve cells cursed a little bit a couple of times, but still remained alive for now. But still I will put a scene because QTE. After defeating the piece of the boss, we met water that Kratos can swim in. Suck, Tommy Versetti. Fuck, I shouldn't have swum there. And we came across a prisoner who called us all sorts of bad words and said that after what Kratos has done, he would rather die than agree to be saved from his hands. We will still don't know anything about Kratos' background and what he did, and I must say they managed to pull the intrigue very well. I really was more and more interested in what everyone is so afraid of him. And here's another type of quick time events called pulling the circle so fast that it better that mom doesn't come into your room while you're doing this under the table. With the thumb of the standard potion, successfully performing such a quick time event is only possible if you're the fastest finger in the Wild West. Otherwise take your index finger and start jacking off the button like you haven't jacked it nothing in your life. The finger from this was almost dead, but still it added adrenaline to the battle so that you would not float around the chair like a fat cattle, but would not constantly activate and vault in the battle process, which is pretty cool. At such moments my soul began to rejoice that this game did not come in the era of PlayStation 3, during which they like to combine such moment with gyroscope of the third DualShock, which often works through the S, and the gyroscope wanted to show everything in the same S to the developers who insert this crap into the game. Next we saw the smartest sailor on a planet who during the shelling decided to rise up approach Kratos in order to become an ideal target for those archers. And why the archers stupidly refused to shoot Kratos himself, who doesn't really try to hide, it's not clear. A box endlessly generated from the void. His hands are fucked. What should you do when you are staring at hefty snake that loves to eat plum sailors? Well, of course kneel down in the hope that he will have mercy on you. Why run away? What kind of idiot did even come with this shit? And since this fool had the key that we need, then after the final victory over the Hydra, we will need to go inside the snake and fight the eaten Sally. enemy. After traveling through the inside of a snake from a modern game, it doesn't look so impressive anymore, but if you imagine that I returned to 2005, at the time the level inside the just defeated boss looked very cool. How did the sailors even have the intelligence to manage the ship if they are fucking lined up on silver platter in front of the snake which or in the hands instead of with some kind of weapon? An oversized boss must roar before the fight to pretend he's fucking tough cliché. But anyway, it looked and sounded pretty epic. But no matter how epic this roar would be, how he pissed me off constantly blowing off the platform so that I constantly have to climb back to him. By the way, crossing two swords in front of you prevents a strong wind from blowing you off the platforms. Physics, hello. Another couple of seconds of whining about local quicktime events. In order to start their implementation, it is necessary to stand in a certain place in relation to the enemy, otherwise it will not want to start. And in case when the window of making QTE is limited, then by the time you get into the position you need to perform, the enemy will already have time to wake up. Needless to say, the game is filled with such an overwhelming amount of ultra-violence and gore that even Malcolm McDowell would feel uncomfortable here.
Thank you! Thank the gods you came back for me!
I didn't come back for you.
As soon as Kratos started talking, something in his voice immediately alerted my ears. But what I realized far from immediately, since this fag hardly speaks. After several of his remarks, I still realized that my ear was so cut.
Ares, you will die for what you did that night.
Since this game is quite old, political correctness, especially in such game, was not famous in those days. And so the developers decided to call for a role of whitest character in gaming history, the blackest voice actor in history. I don't have a 47th chromosomes to scold the developers simply for the fact of such an actor's choice, but you can still scold them for that a Negro accent coming off the mouth of white scene could be placed at all. Who previously cut in half the monster that Kratos is just about to cut in half. Then there was a cutscene thanks to which I understood that the school children of the mid-2000s loved this game so much and began to cry tears because at the time, instead of second PlayStation, my parents bought me a fucking computer.
Come back to bed, Kratos.
Who would have thought, but we really have the opportunity to go back to bed. And not just come back, but play the hottest fucking mini game for which rockstars were given cons, but Santa Monica was allowed to keep it an Easter egg. And so we arrived in Athens in order to destroy Ares, for which we promised to forgive all our sins for the past, in which we still do not know anything about. Intrigue! Another annoying thing in the combat system is the dodges that are assigned to the right stick, which is due to the fact that unlike the button it takes some time to bend in a certain direction, it is not always possible on time to have time to react and jump in the right direction, especially considering that he will not want to jump during the strike animation, so in the future when the dodges are quite important, I will burn out notably. Perhaps the time has finally come to talk about the fixed camera beloved by the time by many developers. Everything is not as bad here as in the Resident Evil, and due to it, it's sometimes possible to demonstrate very cinematic and even epic picture, but still in other moments, especially when it comes to platform sections, when necessary clearly understand the trajectory of your jump, these fucking fixed camera angles do not help from the word fucking. And in addition to platforming, in some places it is difficult to navigate in spaces, because instead of turning the camera, you have to go around the location with your feet in search of passage. Then we met Aphrodite, who is going to give us a new skill in which you need to defeat Medusa, about which she spoke as follows.
Medusa, the queen of the Gorgons.
It is okay for those Gorgons that they have 350 million queens with the same appearance, since this Medusa is far from last among those Medusas that I have yet got. I was told that I had earned enough red goo to upgrade my weapons. Well, I was so pleased that I went to pumping menu, fucking all my goo into weapon upgrades, and there was still 22 goo left before I improved. Here are some fucking bastard. Of course I understand that this game is already old as fuck, but still some of the elements of the scenery that Kratos can climb make you think what the fuck he is for them holding on. In order to climb this broken staircase, Kratos happened to bring down a healthy touch, which like this a miracle fits perfectly in height, and like this a miracle fell clearly in such a position that allowed it to climb up. And that was the easiest way to climb this ledge, like some kind of box to put on something else was not possible. Why modern God of War is not like that? That's not fair. I want highly polygon fucking boobs. Who would doubt where you will reach your little hands. Also, Kratos is now paying for the atrocities that he committed. No one will punish him for if he continues to slaughter civilians. This could easily have been avoided if Kratos had thought to open his mouth and said that he was not here to kill her. In-game unskippable cutscenes on the engine. This man, by the way, tells us that he is afraid to open the doors because monsters will get to him, but when we open the doors a little later, we will find out that there are no monsters in that room. Despite the fact that this would seem that the game is ordinarily stupid slasher, in it from time to time we meet moments on the way in Soul which you need to pull the pencil out your nose so that your brains, at least chugged, begin to work. It's cool, and in modern games it's not so common. Unlike all the others, the birds decided to take this bursty oracle with them without killing, in order to throw it off of great height after a while that it could grab in a rope and fight in even don't cut your hands. Why it was so impossible to kill her right away on the spot, it's not clear. And her arms will turn out to be so strong that she can sack for a long time. How much will it take for me to be able to argue that those two statues should be put on top of each other? And this is not a quick brain experience in my case. Suck the ray tracing. How awesome does it look in a fucking 2005 game? Here modern games cannot always boast such a reflection, but here is the game almost 20 years ago.
Good, my boy.
God of War used the word boy before it was mainstream. Given the age rating of the game, I can safely argue that those days trousers has not been invented, you fucking censors. From this busty oracle we learned a piece of Kratos' background, that he was one and ordinary not so white black man, and that Ares can only be killed with the help of Pandora's box, and therefore we went to a long journey in search of this box. More and more, another problem of the combat system will overtake me, namely opponents who respawn more and more each time and do it so often that at times there is confidence that these faggots are endless. And thanks to this, when they really spawn endlessly, as in this case, and I need to perform some action in order to so that they stop spawning, I will understand this far from immediately, because I will think that they should end soon. And toward the end I will hammer and hammer on square button with a triangle so fucking time that my finger on my attempts to move them will give me an answer, fuck you. For 3 days Kratos climbed to the top of the mountain that the giant is carrying, on which we will spend quite a long time, and even though this giant is constantly walking, which provokes the shaking of the mountain that is on his back, when I'll to move there I'll never notice that at least some location there should be at least a little unstable. Everything will be so smooth as it during of stay there giant decided to go to sleep. After we received a new sword, while it's in our hands, the blades of chaos disappeared from the back, which seem to be attached to him forever and he cannot take them off. Where is he hiding them all this time? Enemies with shields who need to knock down that shield first, which be only can done with Chaos Blade, and which is not so easy to do when there are so many of them, because when I start swinging with a strong bow, someone will definitely decide to fuck me, running around attempt to hit, and taking into account the fact that this location needs to be passed as quickly as possible, because the floor will open soon. They have worn out my nerves enough. These are fucking swords that you need to slip through very quickly in order to have time to turn both switches and run to the doors before they close. Next we stumble upon a cutscene in which we were shown how to back Kratos became so white.
Without mercy.
Since when did arrows become so powerful that they began to blow off person's head? Or is the head so fragile, I don't know.
Ares! Destroy my enemies, and my life is yours.
It turns out that it's so easy to win a battle that you could not win on your own. Just shout, hey Ares, help me a little, I'm sucking something here. I wonder if Ares will help me edit the video when I feel like doing it. Now I need to pull this cobblestone so that the arrows of those dudes not hit me, but some of these arrows apparently have the ability to pass through this cobblestone and directly fuck me. If you stay in this room for a long time, the gates will close and Kratos will stab the thorns. The distance between which is large enough to just stand between them and wait until the gate opens again. На мануске написано, что мне нужно пожертвовать самым важным или to continue my journey. As a result, it turns out that I have sacrificed some men in cage, which is hardly something important on ultimate for Kratos. I got the trident of Poseidon, which is not visible in the hands of Kratos, which means I was assumed that he put his in triple S, thanks to which I can now swim underwater indefinitely. Before that, Kratos was such a bad swimmer that he was not even afraid to dive into water for a second. Fuck, but but I didn't try to dive until this moment, but I just assumed this based on the fact that we were just now told that I can dive. And if this is the case, I've just outpaced the fucking dissatisfying commenters. Don't think, most likely you can find something else video that you can fuck with. When diving underwater for the first time, you will find that Kratos has a very powerful forehead. And it also turned out that underwater segments taken into account that the fact that most games, especially those on those years, are wild diarrhea. They are quite comfortable here, and in general there are quite a few of them, so for this respect game. Following which I met these dogs. These fucking faggots, I feel like endlessly spawning fucking dogs, are harassing me from all sides, which I dodge due to the fact that the dodge stick I don't always have time, and fuck how I often died here. Now we are in a labyrinth, the only condition of passing which is to kill all opponents in it. Because it's not a game of 2000 if there was no levels in it from which you can exit all by killing the opponents on their own it. And these faggots are also hiding well, so if the case might miss some corner or even on purpose, now knowing that you definitely need to kill everyone here, then run around it and look for it you missed then and where. I already talked so fucking hard about the game, completely forgetting that I forgot to say about the music. The music here is so cool and epic that even Zack Snyder plays it, he will say that his films are not epic enough. We press some button, after which a huge statue of main villain of Toy Story crawled off the ground, ran visit the level of Crash Bandicoot, who pretty much roughened my nerve, and before our eyes appeared a second boss. Yes, I have already completed more than half of the game, and this is just a second boss. And all because there are only 3 bosses in the game. Serpent, this guy, and Ares. Despite the fact that they are all cool and unique, they are somehow a bit small for a slasher. After that boss fight, the red anus with eyes gave us an our inspiring ability that will greatly have us with enraged endlessly respawning opponents, namely the ability to summon slaves of Hades, who in parallel with me will kick opponents. These superpowers are all pretty useful and cool by the way, or to be more precise, half of it. Lightning is only needed a couple of moments and you don't use it anymore, and participation is only useful when you are one-on-one with the enemy, well, or if there are maximum 3 or 4 of them. A battle usually involves a million opponents, and dig to you will have someone turned on stone. And therefore either the slaves are lightning, but none of the shoots, but the one that cherishes everyone who is standing next to me.
Tell the God of War I am his no longer. Tell him he is not safe while I walk the earth. I will find Pandora's box, and I will use it to see him tremble and fall before me.
First time I say a great story about white negro who fights against slavery, and secondly, you fucking unreliable dick. Either you want to be a slave of a white Aryan or you don't. Well, just think he killed a wife and daughter, with whom it doesn't happen, we all went through it. Took and violated the terms of contract conductor with a slave owner. By the way, the further it advances in the game, the lesser we meet the first aid kit in the way, which co-opted with the increase of number of opponents will give an excellent result of S-Fire. We stopped God of War in order to show you the ancient Greek Tetris. And now the moment has come for a very long and slow crawling along the wall in direction of the fuck you know what several times in a row. And if there was an opportunity to turn the camera, you wouldn't have Dick knows how much to crawl in one direction to realize that you need to go in opposite direction. Immediately after which the moment came with my next asshole, because the time is so limited that you can stop for accident, and if probably 10 if not more, this white black bitch did not want to jump the ledge in any way, no matter how hard I try. And at what the model of Kratos reaches the ledge, just sketch of the fucking hands and you grab it. Why you bitch bothering you? And what the hell, wherever Kratos is standing, in any case the spikes get him. The distance between them is so large that even fattest man alive could hit. And by the way, the hit detection of some ledges just likes to show and not pretend that I jumped correctly. Kratos will refuse to grab it for a cut. It wasn't that much, but when it happened at the most fucking right time. In another vision from the past, we were shown the last village that Kratos attacked by the direction of Ares, so zombified that he even forgot that this is the village in which he lives and where his wife and daughter are now. This is what happens when you run for a long time of business trips, forget where you live. And for the fact that Kratos killed his family, their ashes forever scream his body. And what does this dust have to do with this being so advanced that being light gray somehow managed to make a red tattoo even more red? Wilhelm scream. At the end of the game, the developers of course began to get little lazy, putting the item that opens the tray in front of a dude's hand, right next to the door.
Прямо рядом с этой дверью.
Open and fuck your brains out. I understand that this game is old and soap hasn't even come into war yet, but fuck it, it seems to me that such texture more appropriate to the first PlayStation than the second one, and not even the start of its existence, 2005 already, after all. Could at least those elements that you show in close up at least slightly increase resolution. Following the soap, I came a buggy location in which half of the opponents disappeared, because we reached the door that opened after killing all the opponents did not want to open, and I don't know if the emulator bug or the same thing happened in the game itself in the console, but my god, it would better if this bug was not fixed and I was just here in an empty room, because when I restart, how to put it more correctly, then in the game I remembered how words look like in the game in the beginning of 2000. It's not like the usual fucking that you say normal human voice. It's a bitch, fucking motherfucker, fucking motherfucker, what the fuck, and all this set with the volume that I did not know I could reproduce, because even the neighbors across the fence being at the moment in another city heard it. The word endless spawn would be a strong understatement, and what does anyone want this fucking kamikaze birds endless fuck me from which I don't always get time to dodge in parallel with this archie shooting from different sides, and on top of this also platforms move in different directions, and if you decided to stand on a platform that does not move in order to take a break, then in a couple of seconds you will be killed by a one-shot blow from a pipe. After this game rape, Kratos got to Pandora box and was told to bring it to Athens to beat the God of War there. As that god woman imagined Kratos will reach this box with his own hands to Athens, or at least how he did lower it down from the giant, it doesn't matter, because the God of War, by the power of God, felt that Kratos had found this box, and therefore threw a piece of block in this direction, pinning Kratos to the wall, which suddenly did not stop him death, because if you don't really want to die, then you just need to run through purgatory and through the platforming section, get back to the world of мир живых, but before you get out into the world of living, you will have to master the spinning garbage, which are very many, in which spin in different directions and different speeds, and if you touch at least one of them, you will fall, and all these paths will have to be taken from the very beginning.
Ожидает это пиздопроебина. Да не въебение, высокая крутящаяся труба с колючками, которые расположены в рандомном порядке, и за счет того, что камера и рандом нельзя, что там ожидает тебя сверху, ты знать не можешь, а поэтому прыгать довольно опасно, а если не прыгать, то недалек час, когда один из этих ножиков тебя припинет.
And if you do not jump, that the hours is not far off, and one of these knives will fuck you, for which you don't even have to touch it. The hit detection works here few centimeters before Kratos model and the knife model meet each other, and you fall down to the bottom, starting all over again. And even saving will not save you here, because you need to do this so quickly, then on easy you can save a millimeter from the blade, which after loading the checkpoint will immediately fuck you and you will fall.
А знаете, что может быть хуже этой бесконечной длинной трубы? Еще одна бесконечно длинная труба с еще более рандомно расположенными лезвиями, которых теперь больше и которые теперь расположены еще ближе друг к другу, чем в прошлый раз.
Kratos found the stolen Pandora box, opened it, zoomed it in Photoshop stretching. No, seriously, the zoom effect is perfect. And when we got to Ares, before we fought him, we had the chance to save our family from endless clones of Kratos, and this infinity is such on the edge of this infinity will be met another infinity in double volume. And beside the fact that they quite actively endure my health, they also endure the health of my family quite quickly. I can give them part of my health, but then they kill me faster. In general, this is another asshole in who huge me the bunch of deaths, but still managed to pass it, and we go final boss Ares.
Not again.
Have joined me, Kratos!
The villains invites the hero to go to his side cliche. Who the hell is pulling a sword with his hand around the blade? Defeating Ares with saves for the breeze, how I feel for those people who fought him on PlayStation 2, starting the fight from the very beginning and each death.
Remember, Kratos, it was I who saved you in your time of greatest need.
I haven't forgotten, Ares. I remember how you saved me.
That night, I was trying to make you a great warrior.
You succeeded.
Oh, well, what an ungrateful brute Kratos is. As a result, the goddess of boobs deceived Kratos, now ribbing him of nightmares.
We promised your sins would be forgiven, and so they are. but we never promised to take away your nightmares.
From for which he decided to cosplay the typical teenager of 2007, he could fucking do it from the very beginning and would not have to fuck his head with the murder of Ares, but they didn't let him die because now he has to take place of Ares and become the new God of War. After that we are offered to play the game on ultra hard difficulty, to which I will answer them, so go fuck yourself. This is how the very first God of War was, one of the best slasher games I ever played, on an emulator. I can imagine how people manage to beat without manual saves, but with this little cheat the game is perfect in every way, and therefore if your computer pulls the emulator on the second PlayStation, then be sure to play it if you haven't already do it, it's worth it. In the meantime, subscribe to our channel so as not to miss scenes for a second game.